Good. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good possibly evening. Thanks so much for joining us today for our NMRC webinar, Amplifying Youth Perspectives, launching the NMRC's Elevating Youth Voice Guide. We have a really amazing webinar full of our Youth Advisory Council today, and those who support it going to present the Youth Voice Guide. In the meantime, as everybody's getting settled, please drop your name, where you're calling in from in the chat, and then what is your favorite season? Are you happy that we're in fall now? Are you mad? Do you miss summer already? Are you looking forward to winter? As we give folks another minute or so, drop in again, name, where you're calling in from, and then what's your favorite season. And just a reminder to click the 3 dots in the chat box to make sure that everybody can see your message. You want to switch it to attendees can chat with everyone. Awesome. Oh, perfect. We're already starting to get. Kent says summer is your jam. I love that. DC. Okay, we got a couple people from DC. One, fall is your favorite. One, summer. Personally, it's fall for me. I love fall. I'm so happy that we're here. Awesome. Awesome. For those who are just joining, welcome on in. My name is Jake Sullivan. I use he, him pronouns. I work with Mentor National. And here today we are about to start the webinar, Amplifying Youth Perspectives, launching the NMRC's Elevating Youth Voice Guide webinar. We're just giving folks another minute or so to settle on in. And folks are just dropping in your name, where you're calling in from, and then what is your favorite season? Awesome. Summer, longer day, Guillermo. Yeah, I get that. I do like the longer days of summer, but I can't personally. I'm in Baltimore, and I don't know if anybody else is in Baltimore. I saw a couple people in DC. You know, it's humid here, so I'm glad to be out of that. All seasons bring me joy. I love that answer, Rebecca. That's great. We got Texas representation, Kentucky, Chicago. Again, for folks, just a reminder to click the 3 dots so that everybody sees your message as well, if you haven't already. Tanya, I get that. My favorite season is anytime it's not snowing. I agree. That's also kind of my favorite season. Thanks all for being here. All right, so I think we can get started. I'll kick us off with a few slides before passing it over to our presenters for today. First, as always, this webinar is a project between the National Mentoring Resource Center and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and it's funded through a cooperative agreement from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, otherwise known as OJJDP, the Office of Justice Programs in the U.S. Department of Justice. A little bit about, oops, one too quick. A little bit about what the National Mentoring Resource Center is, if you don't know. There are some, I guess, 3 main components to the National Mentoring Resource Center. We have the website that's full of so many amazing resources from a practitioner-focused blog. There's all sorts of research-based resources, evidence reviews on various programs, models, and populations. Then we have a really great research board, now international. We have folks all over the world doing research on specific topics related to mentoring. And then we also are able to provide training and technical assistance at no cost for your mentoring program, also across the country. So you can apply for that and be connected either to a local technical assistance provider or a local affiliate through that website. And we'll provide the link at the end of the webinar to the National Mentoring Resource Center. For ways to engage, remember, use the chat box to introduce yourself as you all already are. Thank you for that. Talk with one another, share resources, respond to what the presenters are saying. We definitely want to hear all of your ideas as well and see what you have to say about the Youth Advisory Council's guide. We'll actually have a dedicated section at the end as well for feedback using Mentimeter, so get ready for that. And then the Q&A box, please drop in any questions you'll have, because again, we have a dedicated time at the end of the webinar to answer your questions about this process and about the Youth Advisory Council. We have an anonymous survey at the end of the webinar that'll pop up on your screen once we finish. It'll only take 3 to 4 minutes, but it's super helpful for us to know what we can do better, the topics that you'd like to see in the future, and so on. And then in about a week, you'll receive an email with information on how to download the slides, recording and resources, as well as where they'll be posted on, this is our website, the National Mentoring Resource Center. I have a couple quick polls for you all before we get into introductions. So let me launch those just to get to know you all a little bit more. Again, please keep dropping your introductions in the chat. I love to see it. The first one is one of our standards. It's around what is your role in the mentoring field. I know this one is always a little tricky because a lot of us wear multiple hats, but pick whichever one you're feeling like today, whichever one you're showing up to this webinar with, and then we'll go from there. Just looking through the chat, it seems like fall and summer might be the two most popular ones here. That's not an exact, that's more of an estimate. So don't if you're not represented in that, you're still valid here, but I saw a lot of falls and summers. Awesome. So I'll give folks another 10 seconds or so to answer this poll before moving on. Okay, and poll. And so you should be able to see the results on your screen. It looks like most of us are mentoring program staff and practitioners, but we do have a good amount of mentors here today. So thank you for showing up. Educators, TA providers, funders. And I always like to ask for those who said other, feel free to drop in what your title is in the chat so we get to know maybe folks who weren't included in this list here. Awesome. And so I have one other poll for you all. Let me actually go back and stop sharing that. And College Success Advisor, thanks. Awesome. Possibly to develop a mentor program. Well, you're in the right place, Alyssa, so thanks for being here. Okay, so my next poll for you all is, since this is a webinar about youth advisory councils, this one will ask, do you have a youth advisory council or something similar? And again, this is assuming that you work at a mentoring program or another youth serving organization. And the answers are, yes, for a while, we've had it for a bit, or we're in the beginning stages of creating, or not yet. I'll give some folks time to answer that one before I share the results. Okay, another 5 seconds or so. Those last answers in, and awesome. So I'll share the results. It looks like there's about a quarter of us who have had a youth advisory council for a while. So again, please feel free to drop in your ideas, your tips, things that you've learned in this work as well in the chat. And then another quarter or so are in the beginning stages of creating. And then about half of us are have not yet created a youth advisory council. So you're in the perfect place. This is a webinar that's meant to lay the foundations for some of the parts of what it looks like to run a youth advisory council, and then also we'll be releasing a guide later this fall that is accompanying this webinar on, again, how to incorporate youth voice and youth experiences meaningfully into your programming. So I'm glad that everybody's here today. Stop sharing that and close that out. And I believe, yes, there's enough of me. I'm very excited to pass it over to the folks who put this webinar together, who put the guide that we're going to be talking about together. And I'll kick it over to Kamal to introduce yourself, and then we can just go down the line.
Hi, everyone. So happy to see so many people who could join us at today's webinar. My name is Kamal Amrinani, and I'm a member of the NMRC's Youth Advisory Council. I'm a senior biology and Spanish major at the University of Louisville, and I'm originally from Aldie, Virginia.
Hey everyone, I'm Gabriel. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar. It's going to be an amazing time, and I hope everyone enjoys a little bit about how to create a youth advisory council that is successful. I'm from Puerto Rico originally. Down here right now, I go to college in Providence College. If anyone's from Rhode Island, props to you. And I study economics. So yeah, thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for all of you being here. My name is Arya Nima, and I'm also part of the NMRC's Youth Advisory Council. Right now, I'm studying business at the University of California, Berkeley, but I'm originally from Colorado.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martha O'Connell. I'm with the NMRC. So I've been working with Jake and the team at the National Mentoring Resource Center for a few years, supporting a lot of different products and projects that we do. And yeah, I'm here with the Youth Advisory Council because I had the honor the last couple of years of working with the group. Our late colleague Karina, who we're going to speak a little bit more about in a bit, was a beloved colleague, and she really led the Youth Advisory Council. So I was really supporting her in this work and got a lot of guidance from her in this work that I've learned so much from. So that's been my role, and I'm excited to be talking about the guide today with this team because it's been such an amazing process that we've gone through the last like 8 months or so. And thank you all so much for being here.
So before we get into today's content, as Martha mentioned, we wanted to first take some time to appreciate, remember, and honor Karina Nova's amazing leadership. She was the Impact Project Implementation Manager with NMRC at Mentor, and Karina and I actually started off on the council at the same exact time. And in these past 2.5 years, I saw what an amazing person she was, a wonderful boss, a mentor, and a friend, on top of so much more. And I'm so lucky to have been able to see how she grew this council, her dedication to the mentoring field and specifically to youth voice was so evident in the work that she did with us by leading this council. She provided so much organization and really took us to the next level, expecting the best out of us and really pushing us to improve the quality and depths of our project, and was so instrumental in putting together the guide that we have to share with you all today.
I can also second, what Kamal just said. Karina was amazing. Definitely the kind of coworker that anyone would like to have. Energetic, positive, vibrant. She was amazing. So I don't think you can stress that enough, how much we miss her, and how good she was to all of us.
Yeah, I also want to say kind of the same thing. Karina really led our youth advisory council and was the most supportive supervisor you will ever have. She consistently helped us all the time throughout the summer when we had big projects. She was always emailing back really fast. She always supported us. And she was also a great friend more than a coworker.
So off to the content of the guide. I forgot to say in my intro that I'm also part of the Youth Advisory Council. So what I'm going to talk about is something that I know a little bit at least about. And I guess you have a couple of questions about what is the Youth Advisory Council? What is the guide that we created for all of you? So the first introduction question that we have here is, what is the purpose, or what was the purpose of the guide? So in this guide, we wanted to give a little bit of feedback, not feedback, but tips, recommendations to any organization or provider that wants to implement youth feedback and youth participation into your organization more, integrate more youth, but specifically if you want to create a youth advisory council. So I want to stress that again, that the guide is specifically about how to create a youth advisory council, but the recommendations that we give are definitely useful for any other way in which you can implement or want to implement the participation of youth into your organization. So what we define as youth voice for this guide is the perspectives of people in their early 20s, like myself, or below that age range. What is a youth advisory council? So a youth advisory council is a platform created to amplify the voices and perspectives of young people, but it's much more than that. In our council, we participate or work on a lot of projects, really meaningful projects. For example, this guide, this webinar, we've done a lot of other webinars as well on different topics. Media literacy, I know Arian and Kamal have done other topics as well. And I've been in the council since January, and I've been able to work on a lot of different projects that have been meaningful. And I think one of the most important aspects of this council specifically, and I know Aryan and Kamal mentioned it in the last slide, is being able to implement the feedback, as Karina always did, that young people give to your organization. You know, a common theme that you're going to see or hear throughout this webinar is about what's really the point of implementing youth voice into your organization if you're not going to implement the feedback that they give and the ideas they have, and the ways in which they want to change for the better of the organization, not only for the organization, but also for the communities that you all serve. So that's a Youth Advisory Council. It's a group of young people that are there in your organization to help you grow and help expand the mission of your organization effectively. Who is the guide for? Again, if you're in the process of creating the guide, or not the guide, the Youth Advisory Council, you're going to find this guide really helpful. If you have an advisory council, maybe you can find ways to improve it, implement some of the recommendations that we have, or have a critical stance or positive critical stance towards your Youth Advisory Council. Again, I hope you can find it helpful, and I think it will be helpful for all of you.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that went into creating the guide itself. And as Gabriel mentioned, we had these motivations for what we wanted this guide to really showcase, but we had a lot of aspirations, and there's so much in the field of youth voice. So in order to kind of collect more information, we first started with a research phase. And obviously we are very involved with youth voice. We're on a advisory council ourselves. However, our experiences are just a sliver of the experiences of young people in the country in the mentoring field. And so we really wanted to widen these range and the perspectives that we got to inform this guide. And to do that, we did focus groups. And so each of the advisory council members led a focus group, and we had 4 in total. And one of the challenges in doing this was the recruiting part. We actually reached out to mentors affiliates for them to recommend multiple young leaders within their program to participate in these guides. And so it was, as you can imagine, a pretty complicated process trying to align all of these individuals' timings to come together for one voice, one focus group, and to have different programs represented and different voices represented. And so that was a very big challenge that we had to overcome. And in the planning process, we also paid specific attention to the questions that we asked these focus groups and the types of information that we wanted to get from them and the feedback we wanted from them. So some examples of things that we asked them had to do with kind of their experiences within their programs, and then also if they have had opportunities to engage with youth voice and what opportunities were they lacking or would they like to see, which we'll also ask you all about at the end of today's webinar. And so during the process of running these focus groups, some, I guess, drawbacks that we came across was that it was very difficult to have young leaders from different programs. And so sometimes what would happen is that we had like individuals who had the same program, and so there wasn't as much collaboration or learning from each other from different programs as we had hoped within these groups and in these conversations. And then occasionally when we posed a question, the responses would be more narrower because these individuals are answering these questions from within the context of their own organization, but obviously we're coming at this from the more national or the more of the mentoring field in general. And so in hindsight, we would have loved to have more specificity in our questions or more direction to tailor responses to just youth voice up, yes, within the organization, but within the field as a whole. And so after we collected all of these great responses from our focus groups, the next task was to read through them all and pull out common themes. And once we did this, we each kind of picked a theme that spoke to us that we were interested in further developing and expanding upon to do more research and to synthesize in a way that is palatable for publication in a guide. And so in this way, we divided the work and we created different sections of the guide with content that we first worked individually on and then collaboratively to edit each other's sections and add to polish up the guide. And before any sort of finalization, it went through multiple rounds of revisions, both with Karina, Martha, as well as members outside of the council, with our colleagues at the NMRC to get an outside perspective on our guide. So following these multiple rounds of revisions, we finally had um, a final product that we had within a Word document. And the next step was to work on creating a presentable form for this data for you all to be able to use, which Aryan will talk about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kamal. So basically what we did is we took the info in the Word document and I created a specific slide or a specific page for each section that we talked about. This was definitely a tedious process because that was a lot of our first times using Canva, and especially because we did receive a lot of feedback from a lot of members from Mentor or even from the National Mentoring Resource Center. And we edited it as needed and submitted many copies before the deadline on July 31st. And it was definitely a great experience. I'd say we all got really great at Canva by the end of it, and we learned how to create a proper and cohesive guide at the end of it.
So just to give some more details about this process before we get into the real content of the guide, we really wanted to share kind of the framework that Karina really set up herself as a way of supporting this process with the council. And in sharing this, we really want it to be, to give all of you context on how our process worked for creating the guide and what went into it, but also we're hoping that it provides an example or some options for a lot of different ways that you can support youth councils or youth leaders in different ways for different projects, especially if you're working with young leaders, in different parts of the country or like on different time frames with different job schedules. And, we kind of used a whole framework that Karina set up to make this happen. And it's applicable to other projects that you might all want to do in your organizations. So Karina really carried forward ideas that the Youth Advisory Council from our last calendar year had come up with. So our Youth Advisory Council works on a yearly basis, and ideas are generated by each council, and then there are also ideas and needs that come through our funder, OGJDP, who is, hearing needs from grantee organizations who are receiving funding for mentoring programs and are saying, this is an area of question, or this is an area in which organizations are wondering about how to do this better. So youth voice was really something that was coming in a lot of different directions, and creating a guide was something that had come up from our last Youth Advisory Council discussions. So that is something that the role of a supervisor, which is the role that Karina really played in carrying that knowledge forward from year to year, from youth council to youth council. That was like a really important piece that she fulfilled to make this happen. Karina then also provided a lot of resources to kind of create a framework for all of us to generate ideas, to talk about what was needed in terms of information that organizations like all of you might be interested in or have questions about in terms of youth voice. So we had some technical assistance sessions with grantee organizations who this grant cycle are receiving funds from OGJDP. So any of those organizations that were really wanting more support, more information, more sharing of ideas on how to incorporate youth voice or how to do it better or how to really support young leaders and being part of the organization's work were coming to those sessions. So we had those over the course of about 3 or 4 months, where they were meeting as a group online once a month or so. And the Youth Advisory Council participated in those sessions as listeners and contributors. So those were really places of generating ideas and also hearing what different organizations were dealing with. And then we also had a discussion as a panel about youth voice with other organizations at our new grantee orientation earlier in the winter. So there's just been a lot of moments of kind of gathering ideas and gathering from different organizations. What are you concerned about with youth voice? What are you concerned about with incorporating youth leadership? And that has all kind of led to where we are with the guide so far. Another thing that Karina really set up was almost like an entire workspace framework, project management space using teamwork. So this was a space where the Youth Advisory Council could interact with one another and us at the NMRC on a regular basis, with everyone working different schedules and being in different time zones. It really enabled all of us to check in with one another and kind of create our next steps on this big project that had to be broken down into multiple steps. And then Karina brought me in to assist with administrative needs. So I was just doing a lot of part-time support for her supervision of the Youth Advisory Council's work. And then I was supporting that as a kind of co-supervisor. So the supervisor role has really been kind of like a guiding role, a support role, a provider of resources, a provider of examples of past work, and also providing kind of the platform for the Youth Advisory Council to connect with other organizations to find out what do they really want to know in terms of how a Youth Advisory Council could and should be part of an organization. And just to give you some really specific, like how much time did we spend on this? So the council meets over Zoom or over Teams 3 to 4 times a month. So each Friday we meet for a check-in about all of our different products and projects that we're working on. And then each council member is working anywhere between 15 to 30 hours of asynchronous work, meaning kind of at different times. So we're communicating at different times and being flexible with one another's schedules for this guide to come together. So yeah, that's just to kind of give you a little bit more of what has gone into creating this guide in terms of the work framework and project management behind it over the last 8 months. And hopefully some of those methods can also be used for other projects that you might be working on with young leaders. And now we're going to get more into what is in the guide. So handing it over.
Yeah, I wanted to add to the time commitment of the council. We work about 15 to 30 hours a month, as Martha said, and that's spread throughout the 4, weeks of the month. And I also want to talk about the team workspace. That's a really helpful tool that we have. It's basically where we see, which assignments we're working on and which part I need to do or Kamal needs to do or Arya needs to do, but also the timeline in which we have to do those projects or each part of the project. And that's also where we log our hours, the hours that we have put into each project so that we can get paid. So I don't know if you guys would be able to have this type of platform teamwork in your council if you get to create one. But if you do, I think that's going to be a really helpful tool because it really does help everyone stay organized and stay on track of what's happening. And I want to say that even with the teamwork space, it can be a little bit hard to, stay on track of things if you're working on a lot of stuff. So definitely organization is important in any form of youth involvement. we can move on to the next slide. So youth involvement, that's the key to the guide. That's the big topic of the guide. And the Youth Advisory Council is how you can implement youth involvement. That's one of the ways in which you can do it. So how can youth be developed in leadership roles? Leadership involvement and development is really important for youth, especially nowadays that labor markets are so competitive and so saturated. When young people are in college or even in high school, if they have the opportunity to do an internship or some form of involvement in the youth advisory council, that's going to look really good on their resume for when they graduate or for whatever plans they have for their career. And not only that, but they also have the opportunity to network with the staff members of the organization, which I think could be a really fulfilling experience, not only for the youth, but also for the staff members that are interacting with them. So always remember that the point of the Youth Advisory Council is not only involvement, but also developing the leadership skills of the youth that are involved. We get to do that in different ways in our Youth Advisory Council. The guide is one of them. The guide is something that is of our making. We wrote it, Aryan developed in Canva, of course, with the help and implementation of Martha and Jake and Karina, and all the people at NMRC, but also the webinars are a good way in which we get to develop our leadership roles because we're kind of leading the discussion or the discussion of the content of the guide in this case. So always remember the importance of developing the leadership skills of the youth involved in your organization. How can youth increase their tangible impact in their community? If in our case, our work is remote, so we really don't get to interact with a set or specific community day to day. That being said, if you can have the council or internship program during the summer or even college visits, some kind of form for youth involvement in person, then I think that's a better way to implement youth involvement with direct contact with the communities that you serve in person. I've worked with Mentor Rhode Island for a couple of years now, and that's where I've been able to interact with the surrounding Providence community and the surrounding Providence youth in colleges and public schools at different trainings so that we can help them grow in their personal and professional career. So if you cannot do in person or if you choose to do remote because you would be able to get more applications, then that's completely fine. But still understand that the work that we do is impactful and it's beneficial for the organization. And if it's beneficial for the organization, then it's beneficial for the communities with which you, staff members, providers, technical assistants interact with every day. So how can youth help program relevancy? If you're serving youth, then I think it makes the most sense if you have youth in your program because they will give you different perspectives and a new way of doing stuff. One of the ways in which youth can be really helpful for helping with your program relevancy, or not necessarily relevancy, but the reach of your program, of your work, could be social media. Youth these days are really savvy with, as you know, TikTok, Instagram, even Facebook, perhaps, YouTube. And I think that if you integrate youth and you give them the task of, okay, develop some ideas for social media, how can we reach a bigger audience, then they'll be able to do it. So keep in mind that, you know, new generations have new ideas, new perspectives, new lived experiences, and that's always enriching for any organization, especially one that works with youth directly.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. Now we'll talk about ways that a youth advisory council can be structured. So just for a little bit of context, our youth advisory structure is it takes on the rotating leadership role, where we lead in our own individual projects, but then create like a cohesive end project with all of our individual assignments. For example, we all did a podcast episode and then consolidated all our episodes to make the NMRC podcast series. But I think in a situation where there are more than 4 people in a youth advisory council, I think having the president, vice president structure can be super powerful, where members can be president for a semester or a whole year, where they're leading and they're really creating the projects and helping organize people's work, especially in a situation where a youth advisory council has maybe 10 or 20 people that are working on multiple projects at a time. There could also be subcommittees where you have kind of like a social media team, you have a project team, you have a video team, and that also can be done with a youth advisory council that has more amount of people and more youth that are willing to get involved. The last thing is that if you have an older group of people that have already been on the council, you can kind of do mentorship pairing and recruit new members to the club and have them be paired with an older member. And the older member can give them advice on assignments and how to acclimate into the youth advisory council's structure. And then I'd like to also talk about the importance of youth autonomy in a youth advisory council, especially. So the councils give young people the opportunity to make decisions and create projects that really impact their own communities. For us in an advisory role, we're allowed to provide input on policies and practices that affect young people like us and ensure that the youth perspectives are considered in the decision-making process or just in the information that's put out into the globe and onto the internet. And we also have the autonomy to plan and implement our own projects on things that we're passionate about. So during the podcast episodes and during the blogs, we all write or record something that we're passionate about and a topic that we really want to see a change in, or just a topic that we want to learn more about.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the process of recruiting youth to be a part of this council. And first, we will talk about time frame. So depending on your target age range of who you'd like to see on your council, considering the context of where they are educationally. So if you are looking to recruit college-age students, then you can expect to perhaps see a spike in applications when a semester or trimester starts. So 2 to 3 times a year. And college students typically would have more of a year-round availability, whereas high school students, it could potentially be more beneficial to hold a summer program where their availability is a lot more free. And this can even be something that is framed in the internship manner. So labeling it as an internship and having a set period of time for intensive workshops and having the youth really lead projects in this time could be a great way to not only recruit and also have this as an opportunity for the youth to continue progressing their career aspirations or their educational aspirations by building up their resume with an internship, but also where there is more availability in that summertime to be part of this council. And on the applications itself, it's really important that your organization conveys how participation in the council can really offer a tangible opportunity for personal growth, for skill development, and also a community impact. So being very clear in the time commitment that this role will take, in the actual sorts of projects that you envision this council taking on, and the scope of impact or change that they can have, and the influence that they'll have in the organization as a member of the council. And then also emphasize that there is a supportive environment and that having all these things up front will really promote and attract motivated and committed youth to applying. And another form of promoting these applications is definitely through utilization of social media. So posting on LinkedIn and other platforms will really help to expand the scope of applications that you receive. And more specifics on what to include in an application. So definitely the demographics and personal information, just the basic introductions, and then also to have them share a connection that they have to mentoring, any past community involvement that they have, relevant skills that will make them a great candidate for the position. And then also articulating why you actually want to join a youth advisory council. What changes do you want to make? What is your motivation for being a part of this? And a great question that we have used for our council is having applicants identify a specific area for change or a need within the program at hand or with just the field of mentoring as a whole, and to come up with a tangible and feasible solution utilizing the resources that are available for the youth. And this could be a potential project that they actually work on if they are selected for this council. And this is also great to see the variety and create a council that has diversity in interests based off of asking leading questions like this, of really seeing what passions and projects that individuals would like to work before selecting a council. And now we're going to talk about my favorite subject, which is compensation. So compensation is definitely crucial for recruiting purposes. Whether there is or not compensation should be very clearly labeled on the application, and then also for retaining youth. So to have members that return to the council and that have an investment. And so just some benefits of compensation. The main one I would say is the value that is placed on you when an organization decides to put money into investing into a council and into paying the members, paying the youth, then that really demonstrates that that organization values youth voice, and that action can have implications into the motivation and kind of the feeling that the youth advisory council member has as part of that team, especially when it is in a setting where you're not only with your peers, you are with other full-time or part-time staff members. You may feel like your voice isn't as valued, or those feelings of imposter syndrome, which is definitely something that I experienced when joining the council for the first time. But having compensation and just knowing that they value what I'm saying, that I'm getting paid for this or I'm getting something out of this, and that means what I have to contribute is important and it is worth hearing, is very motivating for me, the rest of the council members. And so I would really like to stress having monetary compensation in the form of stipends, scholarships, if at all possible. And especially with wanting a diverse council, there are so many youth who may not be able to dedicate the amount of time needed for this council if it is not a paid opportunity. And so bridging that gap and getting rid of that barrier, the financial barrier to joining, would allow a more diverse group of students or of youth to be able to join this council. And obviously, monetary wise, this may not be a possibility for all groups in this moment. And so there are various ways to compensate youth that don't necessarily have to be in the form of an hourly pay. And some of the examples that we give are gift cards. You can provide food at every council meeting. That's a great motivation to come and join. You can articulate that you'll provide letters of recommendation, which is essential for just job future career development and also for college applications, if that's a concern that's coming up. And then also providing professional development opportunities, so trainings, exposure to different platforms, as Gabriel mentioned, really improving and developing the leadership skills for career readiness. So and then also providing mentorship. So as program staff, you all have a different perspective and so much to teach the youth. And so being there as a mentor and establishing that relationship on top of being a council member is something that is super beneficial for youth. So whether it's monetary or non-monetary, I just want to reemphasize that it's super important to be transparent with that and really sell yourself when creating these applications in order to recruit, because the youth do want to know, what am I getting out of this? And that is a big factor when deciding to apply.
Cool. Thank you, Kamal. I know this may have been a lot of information for everyone, but I promise this is the last slide. Next slide is just the Q&A, so I guess that's the most fun part for everyone. But we wanted to end off uh, the content part with feedback, feedback, feedback. What do we mean by that? I think once in the council, the best way to compensate the youth. I know Kamal was talking about compensation when you're recruiting the youth, but I think the most consequential and meaningful way to compensate the work of the youth in your council or in the council that you will have is by listening to them, and not only listening to them or collecting feedback, but most importantly, implementing the feedback that they give you. Because at the end of the day, that's why you're interested in creating the youth advisory council, or that's why you have an advisory council. So that's why we want to finish off this content part with the feedback part. It's really important, and we're going to keep stressing it throughout probably the Q&A, because that's the point of the council. And I know we talked about this a little bit, but in our council, in the NMRC, maybe we don't really get to choose the assignments that we work on. For example, the webinars, the podcast, that's something that has been decided before. We get to work on those, but we really do design those projects in the way that we want to work on them. And by that, I mean that we get to work independently and with autonomy. It's not like we have anyone on top of us saying you have to do it this way. And I think that's good for the creativity of the young people in your council. So please remember to listen to your youth in your organization to implement any feedback that they give you if it's feasible. Sometimes it's not going to be feasible. It's not going to be feasible, and we understand that. And you understand that as well. So always remember to implement the feedback as most as you can in a constructive way. And if the young people are not giving you feedback, then ask for it. Maybe they're just shy about that. They think that you're just not going to listen to them. So asking them is a good step. It's a positive step for your organization as well.
All right. Thank you all so much for that great presentation and all of your specific examples and ideas for folks to take away. Again, just as a reminder, this guide will be coming out later this fall. It'll be posted on our website. I know someone asked, it'll be free as well, free to use. And then also these slides and the recording will all be sent out as well via email and also posted to our website. But now we have a little bit of time for questions from the audience. Before we have a little activity for folks, it's on Mentimeter. If you've used that before, we'll ask for some more of your input on where the Youth Advisory Council should go and other things that you'd like to see specifically from a youth voice perspective. But for now, let me open up the Q&A. I know we have a couple in here. So for the first, oh, perfect, wow. For the first question, I saw this come in a little while ago. I think it was when Aryan, you were sharing a little bit about the structure. This question is coming from someone asking, what are some ways you would advise for a group of 4? So this is perfect because our council had 4 people on it. And so I'm wondering maybe if Aryan, if you want to start with that question, and then the others can go from there around again. Some ways that you would advise structuring a group of 4 for a youth advisory council.
Yeah. So I obviously I'm a little bit biased because I think our structure working with 4 people works very well. And I think it's again emphasizing that each person has an individual assignment that's based on something they're passionate about or a topic they have chosen, and kind of have a supervisor that is looking over all the different projects, offering help and support to the group of 4. And I think that kind of creating like like I said, is creating a total project that has each individual assignment but follows a cohesive flow as well. And so I think that a group of 4 is a little bit too small for like president and vice president. So kind of having that rotating leadership model, where some person one of the people can take a lead on one of one of the projects that they really, really like, and the other ones can, and the other people in the group can support them, but they do the main amount of the organization. And then in another project that someone else is really passionate about, they kind of lead that, and then the other three support them like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Aryan said. I think that assigning like a leadership role for a project, especially would be most empowering with a smaller group. It just doesn't make sense to have like a vice president, president, or whatnot. If this council is in effect for multiple years, then there is a senior member, then they could take on more of like a leadership aspect and guide the others or take on more roles within the council. And then also just splitting off into smaller groups. So groups of two to work on projects together can also be another way to do with four.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that part. Come on, just splitting up the group. If you have 5 people, let's say you have 4 people, and you want to do like we did podcast episodes, you can have either each person do 1 episode, so for a total of 4 episodes, or just have 2 episodes and 2 people participating in each one of those. So that's a good way to do it. If you have 2 people, then you can do the same thing. Just one person does one podcast, and then the other person does another podcast. So yeah, splitting up the work is important so that no one's feeling like they have to do all the work and no one's feeling like they have no work to do.
Yeah, a big theme that I want to pull out of what you're all saying really is to trust the young people in your youth advisory council to be able to handle their own podcast episode or their own webinar, or their own project. I think a lot of the time I've seen in the past, not at with the National Mentoring Resource Center, but in other positions I've had, other organizations, even when I was a part of something like a youth advisory council, are the adult supervisors or facilitators not having that trust in the people that they're working with, and so wanting multiple people always working on a project. And sometimes that collaboration is good and it's essential and important, but to have that trust in young people that there are the skills and the experience in order to execute a project, and that again, you as a supervisor is there to be the guiding and support, to provide feedback or provide some additional guidance, but that young people are intelligent and competent to do projects like such as these. So to really just provide trust, or to trust the young people on your council, I think is important. The other thing I'll share as a specific example, Kamal, to your point around if it's a council member who has been around for a while, for this past round of recruitment and screening and interviewing for new council members, Kamal was on the committee to read applications. So that's another example of how you can involve council members who have been a part of your council for a while in important decision-making processes, such as like reading through applications and going through that process of choosing new council members. The last thing I'll share with this specific question is I think I would suggest starting small. I know we provided some examples for structures that could be 10 youth plus, but if this is your first time running a youth advisory council, I think the group did a really great job at illustrating how much work it takes. And so really making sure to start small and quality over quantity, so that you can properly support everybody. And yeah, I know Gabriel has to leave at 2. Gabriel, any last couple of words you want to share with the group before you head out?
Yeah, I just want to say the same thing that I've been saying all over the place. I hope you find the guide helpful. We put a lot of work into that. A lot of details went into that. Martha worked really hard. I know Kamal did. I know Aryan did, and I know I did, and I know Karina did as well. So please take a look at the guide, share with everyone that you think would find it helpful, and give us feedback. We're always happy to get some feedback from everyone, and hopefully improve the next one we do. So thank you everyone so much, and thank you guys for doing the panel. I'll be clocking out now.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. We appreciate you. Awesome. So we do have a few more questions. I think I'll go to this next one from Jeanette. Hey, Jeanette, always good to see you here. This was, I think, in reference to something, Kamal, you were speaking to around feelings of imposter syndrome when you were joining the Youth Advisory Council. Wondering if you can share a little bit more about how you felt that specific feeling or others. When did it end? And then maybe further, like what helped in reducing that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I think I'll start by sharing my peak imposter syndrome moment. It was at the research board, the NMRC research board's like annual meeting at the summit in DC every year. And it was my first year in the council, and I uh went to that meeting that was filled with like all these like not practitioners, like researchers, PhDs, and I felt kind of out of my element. And I was also the only youth there. And so at first, like they were discussing past studies and things of that nature for that year that they had been reviewing, and then also like focuses for studies in the next year. And it was hard for me to speak up at first because I was the only youth in that room. Um, and I also wasn't an expert or subject matter expert on what the conversations were that were going on. And so I was really scared that I would say something wrong, embarrass myself, or um, like say something that wasn't useful. And it eventually took me just like gathering up the courage to say something and then hearing the like how thankful all of them were and how receptive they were to my feedback about the research was empowering, and it made me feel more comfortable in that space to keep adding my input. And so I would say to avoid those feelings of imposter syndrome, having another youth in that room would have really helped me in order to feel confident to express my opinions. And then when did the feelings of imposter syndrome stop? I don't know if they fully stopped yet. It's definitely a linear process, but have gone down a lot more. Just being in spaces, meetings with people that I don't necessarily know. And over time, these experiences have allowed me to be more confident in the input that I give doing these webinars, talking to so many people. Um, all of these projects have helped to overcome that imposter syndrome. And then something that I would advise for you all is to have whoever may be leading a council or be prompting youth for their feedback to just emphasize that we understand that, you're not an expert in what we're asking about. We just want to hear about your experience, about what you would like to change. And there are no wrong answers. Like it's okay to share something that isn't fully thought out or to spitball, but to create kind of a safe environment. And this can start by starting off with council meetings and then like slowly bringing in other members, other individuals or stakeholders in the organization to hold meetings with until eventually, they are able to get to a point where they're comfortable holding a meeting without you as the leader, or just seeing that, creating a organization where you can have that progression in autonomy can help overcome imposter syndrome.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I honestly, I still feel imposter syndrome, so I don't know. It's a long process. So I really appreciate you sharing that journey with all of us. And yeah, I think the point that you mentioned around trying, if you're able to have more than one young person in the room, is huge, because it's also a matter of like not tokenizing that young person for their specific experience. But yeah, there's layers to that. So thank you for that point as well. Martha or Arian, any other things that you would want to add to that question around talking more about imposter syndrome, if you felt that, or other strategies that you've had to overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your candor with it, Kamal, because I mean, I've definitely experienced it in my different work situations and thinking back to my first job experiences, and even job and not job situations that I'm in my life now as well. I mean, I definitely think that connecting with other people has been like such a key for me. Like you were saying, Kamal, like having someone else there. And I think yeah, as I get older, I'm just like continuously reminded of how yeah, the hesitancies and the fears that like a lot of us share. And so yeah, I think for me, yeah, being open about it and yeah, and I think within the council, I think like the atmosphere that we create within the council and within any kind of collective project group that we're in, yeah, anything that like relationship building and discussion and all of those things, um, for me tend to like help break some of that down. So yeah, those are just some thoughts. And Arian, I don't know if you had ideas.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Kamal and Martha said. I just kind of want to add to the part of I think when youth are given a lot of autonomy and they know that their projects are making a real tangible impact, or a significant, or they're making a significant impact in something they're passionate about, the imposter syndrome tends to go away little by little because you know you're actually making an impact in something that you're passionate about and something that you want to see change in. So yes, it is very important to let youth do projects that they want to make sure that they are being rewarded and they're being passionate in the work they do.
Awesome. Thank you all. So the next question here is from Yolanda, and they're asking, how can we better engage other youth in our community who aren't involved? So do any of you have any strategies for young people that would see a youth advisory council recruitment post and be like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, how can we reach those young people? And what is your advice there?
I know Kamal already touched on this a bit with the recruitment slide, but I think a big part of it, especially with youth like teenagers, I'd say like around 16 to 18 years old, it's really important to give them the compensation so they are compensated for their work they're doing and the hours that they're putting in. I think that with compensation, youth are more focused and youth are way more involved, especially because if obviously they're earning money, then they don't have to worry about like getting another job or anything. And I think it really helps them put their utmost effort into the work because they know they're being compensated and they know their work is having a real impact.
Yeah, thanks, Aryan. And in terms of, reaching out into to the community, definitely don't be afraid to rely on your mentor base or your alumni base to see if they have other connections or friends that would potentially be interested in not only joining the program, but the council. Perhaps like you don't need a mentor to be on the council. It can be an outside perspective of someone who's not involved in the organization to give that different perspective.
Yeah, both great answers, great ideas. I think the other thing I'll add is in the same way that there's like research on if you ask someone individually, like directly to be a mentor, I think it's like they're 4 times more likely to say yes. Like if they have that personal ask, I think it would be really impactful if you have a young person in your life, if that's a niece or a nephew or a student or whatever, like whatever the relationship is. If you were like, hey, I think you would be great for this opportunity, you should apply. I'm not saying that that's going to work every time, but to have someone like kind of single you out and be like, I think this is an opportunity that you'd be great at, and kind of pump them up. Because again, going back to that imposter syndrome piece, a lot of young people, I think, would see an opportunity like this and be like, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not equipped enough, or I don't have the experience. And that's not the case, because as our presenters demonstrated so effectively, this is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity where you can really develop a lot of skills, develop confidence, and things like that. So reaching out directly to a young person being like, hey, is this something you want to do? I think could be another idea to explore. Cool. So we have another question that I'm not sure that we would know, but we could see. The question is around gift cards, and if we don't have an answer today, I can definitely ask around on the team to see if anybody has any answers. But wondering if any of you could speak to or have any other ideas. This person is facing the issue where there's fees associated with gift cards, and they're asking if we have any other methods or platforms to provide payment.
I think a good platform is doing Amazon gift cards, because I think that in especially today's world, that an Amazon gift card can really buy anyone anything they would like. And I think you also avoid the fee because you can just send it to their phone number or you can send it to their email. And I believe that people are still able to buy what they want from Amazon as much as they are able to buy it with a Visa gift card.
I love that. That's awesome. I didn't know there was no fee. Yeah, Martha?
Yeah, just to second what Arian said, because we did do gift cards for the participants in the focus group. So Kamal and Arian talked about, the creation of the guide included other young leaders who were interviewed in focus groups about their experiences for 1 or 2 hours. So we did compensate their time with gift cards, and that was what we used. So yeah, that was a good. We haven't, yeah, like Jake said, I can look more into other methods that other mentoring organizations have used also. Our Youth Advisory Council is paid hourly, but we can look into other methods that people use.
I also wanted to highlight some individuals in the chat gave some really great ideas for potential other forms of non-monetary compensation. So I believe one was like service hours to work towards a presidential seal. And then the other was to provide actual like class credit to be part of that council.
Yeah, thank you for uplifting those. And the one idea related to the gift card question that I like is Rebecca saying, ask the youth where they want the gift card from and get that one, no fees attached to that. So yeah, thank you all for dropping your wisdom in the chat. So, okay, great. So we can pause there for the Q&A. We do have a section where we want to get all of your feedback other than the survey at the end. So this will be on Mentimeter, and I'll share my screen in just a second. You can either use your phone and scan that QR code, or you can click that link that I just dropped in the chat, and it'll pull up a Mentimeter, which is a great tool if you've never used it before. And the first slide should be asking you these 2 questions. What would you like to see covered more in depth in the guide, and what topics are you not seeing covered that you think should be included? And so this is based off of our presentation today. We know you don't actually have the guide in front of you, but again, as a reminder, the things that were covered in today's presentation are youth involvement, ways that a youth advisory council can be structured, how it provides youth autonomy, or how to recruit youth, and compensation. So those are roughly the things that you can expect in the guide. And so this question, again, scanning the QR code or clicking that link, will ask, what would you like to see covered more in depth in the guide? And what topics are you not seeing covered that you think should be included? And while you're starting to get to that Mentimeter, I'll share my screen in just a second.
And to answer the question in the chat about hourly pay, does that produce a check or is it mailed to us, or is there an electronic payment? So we submit an invoice for the hours that we work every month, and we receive an ACH bank transfer.
Feel free to let us know in the chat if you're having any trouble getting that link. Oh, perfect. I'm already starting to see people answering the question. I'll share my screen in just a second. Okay. Okay, perfect. So now you should be able to see the Mentimeter with all of your amazing ideas. And so I think we're going to give about 3 to 4 minutes for each question. So feel free to drop in your answers within that time, and we'll let you know when to move on to the next one.
So I see somebody said what types of projects are good choices. One of the ones that I've enjoyed the most are the ones that I felt like I had the most creative freedom to take on, and that was specifically the podcasts, which we've mentioned. So just
Step
a
into
little
Wink
bit
Studio, the
of
platform for
background.
agencies and enterprises.
Um, is that we were each assigned a research board member to interview, and we came up with these interview questions on our own, reviewed their work, and then had a Zoom meeting that was recorded and where we asked them these questions, kind of demystifying their research and creating it in a format that is um, digestible for youth and for the general public by having the youth interview them. And we also like edited it and did all the behind the scenes part in setting up these meetings ourselves. And so it was really fulfilling to work on that product from start to finish and see it published. So in our guide, we do have a section that is like a mock application of questions that you can ask in your application. And then I see a couple comments about the selection process. When we did it on our council, we were really looking towards the passions that the students had, just having like members with different projects that they would like to potentially work on. And then in terms of competency, just communication, especially since we're um, a virtual group, it's super important to always respond to emails, to communicate, to show up to these meetings, and to complete the work and ask for help when needed. And so demonstrating that in the application or potentially asking a question about that is a good way to filter out applicants.
And I think having youth leaders even support the development of the application. So that's something we've been talking about, is having the actual application be developed or have input from youth leaders themselves, can really help with developing the questions.
And we've actually worked with grantees who do compensate and like have youth voice from elementary students. So this is something that is not exclusive to high school and college students. Definitely can be applied in so many different contexts. And it's just creating the right role that is relevant to the age and appropriate for the age in order to expand to middle schoolers or elementary schoolers even.
I love that. Awesome. So I think we can, and so again, the point of this is we're going to look at all of the feedback, all of the comments, and take it into consideration in projects moving forward. So if we didn't get addressed to your comment right now, that's on purpose because we're going to, as a team, look at all these things. But we'll move on to the next question that we have for you all. So I believe it should just pop up on your screen or on your phone. You should be able to answer this question now. This next one is, what advice would you give to other mentoring practitioners that are managing or wanting to start a youth advisory council? So you could either do it if you don't have a youth advisory council, you could think about it as advice that you would want to hear or other things that you would want to hear about as you're starting. And then I know some of us have started a youth advisory council or in the beginning stages. So things that you've learned or pieces of wisdom that you might want to impart on folks at who haven't started yet.
Yeah, we're really excited to have all of these recorded, like Jake was saying, because this will really inform the Youth Advisory Council. Will get to look at all of your input, and it will really inform the NMRC, other products that we focus on, and the council themselves. So
Definitely something I see, be sure you have a plan. You can back up with compensation and apply the feedback from the council. So something that we try to emphasize in the guide is before even forming a council, make sure you have the capacity and tools in place for the projects to be meaningful, for their work to actually show up somewhere or make a change. Because if not, it would be a waste of the youth's time and your time as well.
Yeah, and something that I want to add there is I know Karina and I, something we used to talk about a lot is how this the supervisor of a youth advisory council could be a whole position in of itself. So also keep that in mind in the sense that like this shouldn't be, if possible, I know a lot of us are working with very small teams. This should be a larger chunk of someone's workload. It shouldn't just be something that's tacked on to someone who already has a full plate, because there are a lot of things that are required in this work as we've demonstrated. So.
Another advice I have is don't underestimate the youth. They can really come up with ideas or projects that as adults you may not think about. And so being open to hearing what the youth want to do, the projects that they want to do, and then supporting them and making those come to reality. So always like these projects may not always be grounded in the feasible. So as an advisor or a supervisor, just really working with them on grounding them in reality within the organization, but also encouraging them to think big.
I think we can move on to our third and final question. And again, it should just pop up right on your screen or on your phone. Our final question is, what advice would you give to young people who want to join a youth advisory council? So thinking about either the young people you already work with, you could think about it, maybe you think about yourself 20 years ago, you were 17 years old and you wish someone came to you. What would you tell what would you tell little young you if they were nervous about joining a youth advisory council? What would that advice be? So that, again, we could take this and spread this advice out to young people through this guide.
I like that first one.
Yeah, these are great. We can tell so many of you just really value youth voice and want to create as many avenues for their voices as possible. We're really looking forward to continuing to add on to and learn more about how to incorporate youth voice in our own work. And as we continue to kind of add on to the series of the guide, and then that might lead to other guides or other products or just resources off of these ideas. So this is great as an ongoing conversation and sharing of our experiences across organizations. I love
Absolutely.
all.
One of them that I really love is your voice is important. You don't need to have proper qualifications or experience, just come as you are. I think that one's huge and in so many ways because I think Kamal, you were mentioning it at one point or something like it, but young people are the experts on their own experience, and especially young people are the experts on what it means to be a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 22-year-old, whatever it is at this point in time within the context of the United States. What does it mean to be a young adult in 2024 in the United States? No one has that expertise other than people who are that age right now. And so maybe they don't have multiple degrees and years and years of research experience or whatever it is, but they have the lived experience. And I really think youth advisory councils and youth voice is the epitome of recognizing and appreciating and uplifting that lived experience and how important that is in this work. So thanks for whoever said that one. Awesome. Right. So I think this link will still be available if you do have, I think this was the last one. Yes. It will still be available if you do have any other thoughts afterwards, or of course, always feel free to email us your thoughts in response to these questions. Let me stop sharing my screen very briefly just to bring up our last slide. Before we like kind of officially close out, I just wanted to see if Martha, Kamal, or Aryan, if any of you had any final parting words that you wanted to share, last thoughts with our audience before we wrap up.
I just wanted to reiterate how thankful I am to see so many of you all joining today. It's really inspiring to see, that you guys are all interested in youth voice, and whether it's improving the council that you already have or implementing new methods to incorporate youth voice into your work. And so seeing that change in the mentoring field right now is something I love. And I really hope that you guys can take this guide and that it is something that is helpful to you in this difficult process to start up a council or to start up Youth Voice.
Yeah, just so grateful for Kamal, Aryan, and Gabriel. Aryan had to jump off for class also. So yeah, just so grateful for all of their work on all of these projects. So grateful again to Karina Nova, our beloved colleague. And yeah, I just, as Jake was saying, it's just so important that we are listening to our young leaders, and I would just encourage all of us to think super creatively about all the ways we can do that. Youth advisory councils are one way we can do that, and then there's so many other ways within our organizations and work too, that we hope to continue to talk about. And yeah, there's just so many ways for us to rethink our structures to make way for youth voice. So thank you so much, everybody.
Awesome. And yeah, from myself and from the audience, I'm sure you guys have seen all the gratitude in the chat. Thank you to Aryan, Gabriel, Kamal, Martha, and of course Karina as well for organizing this, for your leadership as part of the Youth Advisory Council. This is such an incredible guide, so important to the field. So really thank you all. And I'll actually pass it over to you, Kamal, to close us out.
Yeah, so again, thank you all for being here. After this webinar ends, you'll receive an email with the survey. So just let us know any thoughts that you had about the webinar, if there's something that you weren't able to share in the multimeter, or you have more tips or other things that you'd like to see in the future from this council. Be sure to share that in that survey as well, and you'll receive these slides as well as a recording to this presentation. Unfortunately, the guide is still in its final editing process, and so it will be available to you all by the end of the year, and you'll receive an email when that is posted to the website as well. But hope you all have a great day.
Take care, everybody.